Hey guys, welcome back. It's Ripe again, back with another Entitled People story. In this video, an out-of-control neighbor built a massive illegal garage on my property. She had absolutely no permission for this, but she claimed to own my land. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. So I live on a farm property that has been in my family for generations and not too much has changed since back then. The house has gotten fixed when something broke and the technology like TVs and the internet are a part of my life like everybody else's. The big thing that didn't change was the kind of work ethic that I was brought up on, which has worked in my family for those generations. I was only 5 or 6 when I started waking up at the crack of dawn with my family to milk cows or collect chicken eggs. I consider myself lucky that my sister didn't want the family farm and I was able to be the one to inherit it after my father passed away. Long story short, nowadays I live here with my wife and 3 kids who are also growing up to learn that hard work can make you happy. I love my land and it feels like the farm is an extension of my family. It's like some great-great-grandfather or something. Some lady though moved into a property next door which used to be another big farmland but got converted into homes. The property line between us are the legal markers and stuff, but those can be hard to see, so like most properties/people, there is a natural kind of divider. In my case, a row of shrubs that line it all the way back. Now this lady, who I'll call Karen, for reasons anybody who's been on the internet would know, doesn't seem like she belongs out here in the countryside. Everything here is old-fashioned and the locals like it that way. She right away tried to take advantage of the good nature that we have to lend things to neighbors by always asking to borrow things and then bringing them back in bad conditions or not at all. When she saw that I had chickens, she was constantly trying to get free eggs, which after a while I stopped giving her because I needed some to actually sell. She is also just loud and obnoxious kind of a person, which to me really ruins the serenity of the farm life. If she wants to sit outside and listen to music, she could at least keep it lower or wear headphones. She swears like a sailor and I don't want my 3-year-old running around and repeating some of those things. Ignoring her for the most part seemed to be the way to go, as we don't like to make waves around here. She did something that I couldn't ignore when she had built a garage that crossed onto my property and even removed the bushes. Not only that, but this thing was just big and ugly and seemed like it was really meant for a different type of neighborhood. It didn't feel like it belonged next to these old-fashioned looking homes. If you wanna know how I missed an entire garage being built on my property, it was because nobody was home. Once a month my entire family packs up the truck and drives to a farmer's market where we do a lot of our selling and it lasts the entire weekend. However, we also went sightseeing in a neighboring town and took some time off, so it wasn't just a weekend when we were not there. Karen used this opportunity to build the garage. I saw it and went to go have a talk with her. Me, why did you destroy my bushes and build a garage on my property? Karen, I didn't. I built it on my property. I don't know who lived here before that you tricked with your bushes, but it's not gonna work on me. It is well within my property and rights to build a garage. Me, I have surveys that were done to this property showing where the line is and that you went over it. Karen, how dare you come to my house and call me a liar? I had the land surveys and unlike whoever did yours, he can actually read. Me, listen, I've had enough of this nonsense. We both know you crossed the property line, and the line in general, and I want you to remove that garage. Karen, I will have you arrested for harassment if you don't leave me alone right now. I was forced to leave and go back home to deal with this another way. Clearly, the legal system was the only thing to get through to her head, so I got a lawyer who handled property disputes and gave him what I had, and let him do most of the work. I was not quiet though when neighbors asked me what the hell that giant ugly thing on my property was. It actually got into the news around here with everybody seeming to be on my side of things and painting Karen in a very negative light of being greedy and trying to steal my property. And also just not being very neighborly, which is a big deal around here. Karen tried to speak to the news to rebuttal, but apparently just trying to call me a hick and making up lies that I tried to attack and assault her just did not end up getting her any attention. It was just clearly fake and her trying to make herself look like the victim. In court we had evidence, but the judge really did not want to bother with any of the back and forth fighting. He was gonna send a court-mandated surveyor to check on the property and see exactly if Karen was actually overstepping her boundaries. And well, it came back showing that her garage was on my property, which was not any big news to me. What was news though was that some of the property markers had been dug up and badly replaced to make it look like the property was hers. Something that made her look extremely guilty and nobody believed her when she tried to say that I was setting her up. Things, believe it or not, got even better when the court was trying to find out how she got surveyor papers that said the land was hers when it clearly wasn't. It turned out that the surveyor she used turned out to be her cousin, different last name, so not as obvious but easy information to find out. She convinced him to lie on the paperwork, claiming that she wasn't gonna get caught since I apparently was just a dumb farmer that didn't know anything. Well, now he was getting arrested for fraud on top of it all and rolling over on Karen as fast as he could to save himself a bit. She paid him money to bribe him for the survey, and now instead of just a property dispute, there were actual criminal charges of fraud and bribery going on. Things that I wasn't directly involved in, and I cannot tell you the exact turnout from it. With the garage, she was forced by the courts to remove it since it was on my property. It was actually also built without a permit, but that seemed to not be getting a lot of focus since it was coming down. Then she had to pay to replace the shrubs she destroyed also. She also had to pay for my lawyer, so luckily I was not gonna be struggling with that financial burden. Karen still sadly lives next door but has not done anything else against me. She seems to realize that she's not going to get away with things here, and everybody knows who she is and, more importantly, what she is. And the next one is a malicious compliance story. And by the way, if you enjoy the stories about farmers getting revenge on stupid Karens, then please don't forget to like the video, post a comment and subscribe if you haven't already. So I am an administrator for an institution that works in the public sector. The hierarchy of the structure is slightly complicated because of the nature of the job, criminal justice. I oversee around 20 employees. Those employees are supervised by 4 individuals with ranks for 4 different shifts. Each supervisor has another ranked, lesser person to assist them, so basically each shift has a primary and secondary supervisor. They all report to one individual who ranks beneath me, and I oversee all of them. I report to the individual in charge of the whole institution, and that person reports to an elected official who manages the entire department. The tricky part is the department has 2 divisions, and while this elected official oversees all of it, they really only run the other division. We have an employee who is very intelligent, however, his book smart is vast and his actual experience in this line of work is minimal. He is a ranked assistant on one shift, so he works with the supervisor of one shift. He sends weekly emails complaining about all the other shifts and their mess-ups. He will write down everything from someone forgetting to remove trash to someone making an error on a form, or even someone interpreting a directive differently than him. He makes it clear that his way is the correct way, and anyone not doing things his way should be written up. He shouts accountability constantly or sends condescending emails after a directive is put in place, usually because someone messed up, and advises me that you need to speak directly with the individual that caused this change, otherwise they won't have a clue it's because of them. Basically telling me and the head administrator how we should be doing our jobs. He targets employees and complains about them demanding demotion and accountability, and badmouths us for doing nothing about poor performance. Meanwhile, I've submitted multiple demotion requests and write-ups to HR for accountability, but the union steps in and dismisses many of them. This individual does not know or see any of this because personal issues are not open discussions, and it really is not his business what discipline is put in place, but it's being done. He just does not see it or hear about it to protect the privacy of that employee. Recently, he has started attacking a shift supervisor on the opposite shift. Anytime something is off, he sends an email with her opus accusations to that supervisor, all of which turn out to not even be true or from that shift to begin with. He ranted about how he never sees the administrators, and in order to run a good facility, administrators need to be visible and involved on every shift, even citing, "It's not that hard to come in late and stay late to speak to your employees," basically telling us how we should be doing our jobs. He wants monthly supervisor meetings instead of quarterly because this will eliminate misunderstandings of directives that the other shifts are doing wrong. Little does he know we had monthly meetings for a long time and no one was able to make them, and nothing came of the meetings, so they requested quarterly meetings. I agree that visibility is important, and I stop in twice a month with night shifts to check in and see day shift every day, but he never gets up to come speak to me during my rounds. He sits and reads or plays on his phone, which is allowed due to the nature of the job. He commented, "I cannot recall the last time I saw any of you," demanding that admins come in more to micromanage better. I was in a week prior, so that kind of upset me as he won't acknowledge me. So I started coming in more and told him, Why are you sitting? You should be managing. There are things to be cleaned and sorted. You can count inventory of supplies. We don't pay you to sit around. This upset him because we do pay them to sit around until needed if they have an intake. I then asked him why he was sitting in a restricted area. He stated it was quiet in there and common sense shows that he's not violating the rule because he didn't go past a specific point so he can sit there. It's a corridor leading to another part of the building not owned by us. I read him the directive which states, at no point should anyone for any reason go beyond this door unless in an emergency evacuation situation. I asked him again what was so difficult to understand about this request. He still found nothing wrong with going past the door to sit on the other side. I told him he has demanded accountability, so he would be getting a write-up for not following the directive. He flipped out saying it was such a minor thing and reminded him of all the little minor things he complains about with the other shifts. I continued to come in and micromanage everyone. A few employees asked why I was there all the time, because we hired supervisors to manage the shift, so did we not think they were capable of doing the job? Well, I advised that some people felt they couldn't manage the shift and wanted administrators to come in more. The complaining individual got several more write-ups, one major one for an almost fireable offense, showing that maybe in fact he didn't have all the answers. He sent an email to my supervisor complaining that I was micromanaging and being extremely anal with the minor write-up infractions that he now says are not even that big to be reprimanded for. My supervisor asked, but this is what you wanted, is it not? You complained that you wanted us to be seen and manage more and hold people accountable when they mess up. The complaining individual wanted other people written up but not himself because he was never wrong, or that is what he implied. I went back to my regular twice-a-month check-in, which is just stopping in to see how things are going on the shift. The complainer has been quiet for now, sitting inside the allowable room reading. His superiority complex will be his downfall. I remind him that the newest employees are the ones we can learn the most from, and he needs to value knowledge he can get from anyone, regardless of their experience or rank status. I am an administrator and I tell staff that I'm always learning and will continue to learn from everyone. And yeah, Ripe Stars, that guy certainly learned his lesson. Props to OP for this perfectly executed malicious compliance. And by the way, if you still enjoy malicious compliance stories, please don't forget to let me know in the comments, because in the end I only really want to read what you find interesting. If you don't care about malicious compliance stories, I'm also happy to read other things. This one starts like this. So this was a couple months ago, back in May. I'd been living in an apartment with 3 other roommates, so 4 of us total for about 8 months. We are all women in our 20s. I barely interacted with my other roommates at all, just between our jobs and classes we never saw each other. We all had our own rooms as well. For some context, on May 5th, my fiancé and I were planning to move into a new apartment together, so by the evening of the 4th I had just about all of my belongings packed up. More on that later though. Even though I barely interacted with my roommates, I felt like we coexisted well and we never fought or argued about anything, except for some very minor instances with Vicky and Kara. Those two were friends and Vicky was definitely the messiest of the 4 of us living there. She would leave her clothes in the dryer for days, pile dishes in the sink for more than a week before cleaning them, and often forget food in the fridge until it would rot. Maybe 5 times throughout my time living there, I would get a text in our group chat from Kara saying something like, "Hey OP, I talked to the others and they said the dishes in the sink are not there, so please clean them." This was annoying, but it happened infrequently enough that it wasn't awful. I figured Vicky lied to Kara about messes since it was just easier to throw me under the bus rather than own up to it herself. On the evening of May 4th, so the night before I was planning to move out, Kara sent a very long and scathing text to our group chat. She went on and on about how she is tired of my mess, hates all my stuff strewn about the apartment, and also personally attacked me, calling me disgusting and inconsiderate. Since I was leaving literally the next day, I did not see any reason to start a fight, so I just said it was her lucky day and I was actually moving out the next morning. She replied, "Whatever you say, just take all your stuff and leave." Now, the malicious compliance. As I had mentioned earlier, I had packed most of my belongings already, but technically not everything. The 4 of us all moved into the apartment at about the same date, but I moved in a few days earlier than the others. This means I had bought a lot of the communal items myself. I was planning to leave these out of kindness despite them being worth around $400, however, once I got that text from Kara, I decided I would in fact take all of my stuff and just leave. These communal items included all trash cans in the whole apartment, $100, the Wi-Fi router, $150, a large metal shelving rack, probably the one that hurt the most, $150. The shelving rack was likely the most devastating loss for them, since they had tons of stuff. For reference, the kitchen had 10 cupboards and 8 drawers, of which I used 2 cupboards and 1 drawer to store my items. The cupboards I used were also the ones above the microwave and the fridge, since I'm the tallest and wanted to be considerate. All the rest of the cupboards, drawers and the entire metal rack, which had 5 large shelves, were filled to the brim with my roommate's stuff. Essentially, there was absolutely no way they'd be able to fit it in the amount of space I left behind without buying another rack or putting it on the counter and floor. I was careful to keep all their stuff from the rack organized and neat when I removed it, and everything from the rack completely covered the counters, kitchen table and coffee table in the living room. I moved out peacefully with all my belongings the next day, and I've been happy in my new apartment with my fiancé. A few days after moving out, Vicky texted in the group chat saying, FYI, the Wi-Fi is not working anymore. I wonder why. And at that point, I left the chat. I've wondered how long it took Kara to realize that it actually was never me that was making messes in the apartment, but I guess I'll never know. And yeah, right, stars, I gotta say, I'm so happy that I don't have roommates anymore. Back when I had roommates, it was always so annoying dealing with people, honestly. So it's nice to have some peace and quiet, and the only roommates I have being Reading Bear, aka check out her channel at The Readers on YouTube, and of course Disney. And maybe another roommate, but maybe I will tell you about that in the future. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Ex-employee returned to work and stabbed me. Now I am getting fired because of this. I work in a mostly typical office setting, and while I am not the head of the whole thing, I do have a management role. With the amount of work we have been getting going down, we had to make the tough decision to scale back a little bit and fire some people in the company. I was told I had to fire 5 guys from my sector. And I just want to make a point that I was not happy about having to do this. I would rather them hear it from the manager they know and talk to daily than someone from higher up they only know by name. It was on me to decide who though, and as a math and numbers kind of guy, I simply found the workers that had been doing the worst work at their jobs and sadly fired them. Great people, but it just had to be done as I was ordered, and since it was Wednesday, they had the option to stay until Friday for a full week of pay or cut their week short. A couple stayed till Friday, but the other 3, including the guy this story is about, did not do anything. On Monday though, ex-employee came into the building and I was a little surprised to see him. I thought that maybe he left a couple of things on his desk that he needed and just forgot about it with all the drama that happened. It's understandable, and the desks had not been touched because after a couple incidents we like to give them about a week to come and get anything they might have left before we go in with trash bags and such. Instead though, he came right up to me and just seemed to stand there. Me? Hey, name, was there something I could do for you? If you need a reference letter or something like we talked about Wednesday, I would be happy to send you one. Him?
No, I'm here to talk about you firing me for no reason.
Me? Do you want to come into my office? We can talk about it. I did not want him causing a scene on the floor. Him?
No, I want to talk about it right here, right now. I did nothing wrong, and anyone here can tell you that I did nothing wrong. Yet you fire me for no reason and expect me to just walk away.
Me? I know you are upset, but like I told you last week, the entire company had to cut some staff. You did not do anything to get fired. You just ended up being one of the people that got cut. Awesome employee. Hey name, why don't we go out for lunch or something? My treat. Him?
I don't need any lunch. I just need this idiot to get it through his head that he's not going to get away with firing me.
I did not actually see him pulling out the pocket knife. I just kind of realized after a few seconds that there was a knife sticking out of my stomach and I was bleeding. Yep, the ex-employee decided that the most logical thing was to stab the guy who fired him. Obviously, my natural instinct kicked in, and since he was still right up in my face, I just started swinging. I made contact with his head and face, and finally he fell down and I backed away from him in fear. The knife was still sticking out of me and I almost pulled it out before another employee told me that the best thing to do is actually leave it in until I get to the hospital. I was mostly in shock and only found out later that a few guys jumped up after I got stabbed and got the ex-employee pinned to the ground until the police could arrive to take him away and get me to the hospital via an ambulance. I just remembered being in the hospital and being told that the knife was in a weird angle and they wanted to take it out via surgery. They could not actually tell from scans if it was going into an organ or not, luckily it wasn't, so they wanted to play it safe. I had to recover in the hospital for a few days, and during that time I was being flooded with emails from my employees asking if I was okay and telling me that they could handle everything until I was ready to come back. I do just want to say that they are an amazing bunch and made the time at the hospital as stress-free as possible. Also, the police came and got my statement and were given the knife that got taken out of me as evidence. I had the surgery on Monday, and because the site seemed to be a little infected because the knife was not exactly clean, they had me there until Thursday for IV antibiotics. Friday I got home and got a phone call from my boss, who was the main guy telling me to fire people at the start of this whole adventure. I had not heard from him, and what I was expecting was maybe well wishes, or on the bad side of things telling me I was using up all my sick days and needed to get back to work soon. I was not expecting what I heard from him though. He told me not to come back and that HR reported to him that I violently attacked an ex-employee like an animal. I could not believe what he was saying, and I reminded him that it was self-defense and I was the one that got stabbed and put into the hospital for 4 days. He was firm though and said I was fired, and as soon as I was able to move around, I had to go to HR and sign my papers of termination. As of writing this, I still have not done that and instead contacted a lawyer because this had to be unlawful what he was doing. Unlike the people that work for me, I have a contract and can only get fired for a good reason. If I went and attacked someone unprovoked, I would understand, but I was in a moment of panic and wanted to get the guy off of me before he decided to pull out the knife and keep stabbing. I was told not to sign the papers, and instead I'm going to work with the lawyer to file a wrongful termination suit and see what happens from there. Even if I win and get offered my job back, I don't know if I will take it or just try to work somewhere else. I just wanted to tell this story even though it has no real conclusion, because the lawsuit is not the point. The point is that I was told to fire someone by my boss, and by doing so I nearly got killed in the process. And then he turns around and tries to fire me for it when really I did nothing wrong in the eyes of the company. I even used the exact lines that HR gave me when I first sat down to fire the 5 people. I got stabbed for this company that did not even seem to care about me as much as the people working below me. They all agreed to make official statements that I hit him after being stabbed in order to defend myself. I will see how it goes from here, and I will get a job where I don't get stabbed. And the final update to the story, out of fear of getting doxed here and because of some scary private messages I got, I won't go into too much detail, but basically the wrongful termination suit was successful and I won. The company had to pay me handsomely and I am much better off now with a better job at a different company. Thanks guys. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I'm curious, have you ever had any work-related injuries? Let us know in the comments if you have any interesting stories to share about your own workplace. And the next one is titled Manager Malicious Compliance. I read all the malicious compliance stories about crappy managers with great interest. I will share my story, which is from the manager perspective. I will add in the obligatory "this did not happen today, but a few years ago." I was part of a security team for a large public building. Since the building had to be available to the public for more than 8 hours per day, we had 2 shifts. The early shift 6 AM to 2 PM and late shift 10 AM to 6 PM. I was the supervisor on the late shift. My staff consisted of me and 6 guards, including a guy I will call Jersey. The building closed at 5 PM, which meant no more people could come in, but the employees and public inside could finish their business and leave. At the end of the day, our job was to ensure the building was clear of people, lock all the appropriate interior doors, set the alarms and leave at 6. Since it did not take 7 of us to complete this, I would allow all staff except one to leave about 5:15 or 5:30, and by then 90% of the people were gone. The daily designated staff member and I could handle the closing tasks. The staff would rotate who stayed with me each day, and the system worked out well for all involved. This meant everyone was getting off work 30 to 45 minutes early every day and getting paid for a full day. One morning though, about 9:30, we had a minor crisis in the building and I needed a staff member to handle it. I knew it would take most of the day, so I did not want one of the early shift guys to handle it, or it would incur overtime. 2 or 3 of my guys, including Jersey, were in the locker room getting ready to start their shift. I asked Jersey to grab his gear and go handle the issue. He looked at me and said, "You know, technically I ain't on the clock yet." I told him he was correct and to never mind. I grabbed a day shift person to handle the issue and the day progressed as normal. 5:15 rolls around and I wander into the locker room. I see my guys all getting ready to leave, including Jersey. I asked them where they were going. They told me which employee was staying with me and that he was still at his post. I glanced around the room and then locked eyes with Jersey and said, "You know, you're technically all still on the clock. Nobody leaves before 6. It was dead silent as I walked out of the locker room. I have no idea what was said to him in the locker room, but I bet it was not pretty. We all stayed late that day and no one said a word about it to me. However, the following morning, Jersey was in my office waiting for me when I arrived. He said,
"Hey boss, I'm sorry about yesterday morning. I was out of line. You won't hear that from me ever again. Whatever you need, I'm here."
We returned to normal operations after that and I had no trouble getting someone to step up on occasion. As a boss, I will do whatever I can to take care of my employees, but I expect a little flexibility from them in return. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.